Hey Charlie, how are you?
I'm good, my friend.
Hey, thank you so much for doing this with us.
You know what? This is the nicest weather I've been in a long time.
Oh, it is beautiful.
It has
here.
been murdersome back home. It's been in the 90s.
Yeah, humid too.
I hear
right?
people out here talking about being hot, and I say, you don't know what hot is.
Yeah, that's right. You know, I was sitting there thinking the other day, you've been doing this for over 50 years.
56 years.
56 years.
As a professional musician, yeah.
Yeah, what got you started?
Well, I've always loved music. I was a little bit late, I was kind of a late starter, late bloomer playing. I didn't start playing about 14 years old, even just learning anything. And once I learned about 3 chords, I learned enough chords to play a song on a guitar, I should say. That's all I ever wanted to do. And that's what I spent my time doing, was learning to play. And then I took up a mandolin a little later on, and I took up the fiddle, and then here we went, you know. And I got a chance to work in the beer joints up in about the only place in my part of North Carolina that had music 6 nights a week was around the military bases, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, in Jacksonville. And we used to work 6 nights a week up there. I worked a daytime job for part of that time, so.
Yeah.
You know, I was pretty busy.
Yeah. Well, you've been over 5 decades. I was sitting there thinking about it the other day. You've experienced a lot of just monumental things that have gone on in music, from the 50s all the way to where we are now. And you've actually kind of evolved as far as even in some of your music. You were, you know, a country fried rocker, I think, in the 70s when I was turned on to you, but you'd actually done rockabilly when you first started out and all. So, but if I asked you just one thing that you remember significantly in each decade, like in the 50s, what would it be?
You know, of course, the advent of the rock and roll sound that came along about the middle 50s when I was still in high school, which it was pretty tame then compared to what it is now.
Yeah.
And then it kind of moved into the Fats Domino, Little Richard era, you know, that started getting a little bit funkier. And then from out of the blue came Elvis.
Yeah.
And I mean, he turned everything around and just completely, you know, that you could say Elvis was 50s, he was in the 50s. And then, of course, Bob Dylan in the 60s. I think Bob Dylan had more to do with changing the face of popular music than anybody that I know of. He is, you know, we talk about innovators. He was the first. He was before the Beatles. He was before any of these people that we think about as being innovators. Bob Dylan was doing it his way. Is here it is. You like it, fine. If you don't, then I'm sorry, but here it is. This is me and this guitar and this harmonica and my songs. And you may not understand what I'm saying, but you listen anyway. You know, and people just, it was so different. It was so raw. It was so real. It was so, you know, just so thought-provoking. And the way it affected me was the freedom that he experienced. I knew I never could write songs. I wanted some of that. I wanted to do that. Of course, I knew I never could write songs like Bob Dylan. This is me trying to write them on that plane. But to experience that kind of freedom when you sit down to write, that, you know, if every line didn't have to be exactly mean something perfect. You didn't have to have a perfect meaning. You could leave a little bit to the imagination, you know.
Yeah.
And he really affected me in that way. He's been a big influence on me. And of course, in the, you know, the 70s and late 60s and early 70s, you got to go with the Beatles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the Beatles, you know, the way I see it is with the Beatles, they got so big so quick that they could do just about anything they wanted to.
Yeah.
And they took all that talent and they started experimenting with it. And they started doing, you know, following their own star and just seeing where they could take it to. And the result was some great music.
And you stepped on the scene really in a powerful way in the 70s. You started to really get noticed as far as a country rocker at that time. You know, kind of a Charlie Daniels, Allman Brothers, Leonard Skinner, all were kind of the same kind of genre, I guess, at that time. Do you remember, as far as that time is concerned, that seemed to be different for you in the sense that you rocked out a little bit.
We still rock out.
You still rocking
Oh,
out. Yeah.
I got the best band I've ever had. That's 50, in the whole 56 years I've been doing this.
Yeah.
These kids are good.
Yeah.
I call them kids. Everybody's a kid to me. But I mean, they keep me on my toes every night to try to keep up with these guys because they really play well.
Great.
And they put a lot into it, a lot of energy into it. But we've always been that kind of a band. We've always been. We were a jamming band that was such a genre as a jam band.
Yeah.
we were jamming away, and we still do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of jam, you were doing that volunteer jam thing for a few years. You haven't been doing that recently.
No, when we first started in 1974. It was a very unique show. And you didn't have such a hard time attracting a meaningful roster of talent because it was the only thing going on like that. Nowadays you got Band-Aid and Kool-Aid and Aid, and I mean it's just everything, and people are pulled in 15 different directions and always receiving invitations to go to a multi-band show. Wow. And at that time, we were about the only game in town. I mean, so far as a show like that was concerned, there were some package shows out, but the only one that I would walk backstage, and I may walk back out with Little Richard, or I may walk back out with Willie Nelson, or I may walk back out with Bill Monroe. I may walk back out. We had Woody Herman in this big band one year. Wow. We had James Brown. We had Rufus Thomas. We had Billy Joel. Just every kind of talent you can think of. We had Eugene Fodor, who was at the time and may still be one of the top classical violinists in the world. Yeah. So it was a mixture of a lot of different kinds of music, and nobody knew what was going to. Not me, but me and the people with me were the only people that knew who was going to be there. Yeah. And when people came in and they sat down, they knew we were going to be there, and CDB was going to be there. But they had no idea who, Yeah. I mean, rumors that get around town. There were some very wild rumors that get around sometimes, but somebody sees somebody coming in on an airplane or something. But basically, all those thousands of people sitting out front would really not know who was going to be there until I would announce them.
Excellent.
And I mean, it was a very exciting concept. And we did it as long as we could put a real meaningful roster of talent together. We did it, and it got to the point we just could not maintain that caliber of talent. We still do it once in a while just for kind of fun, but we ran 25 acts by 8 hours one night in Nashville.
In the late 60s and 70s, that was the time that you could kind of mix it up. It doesn't seem that way anymore, does it?
One of the biggest losses we ever had was the loss of the true AOR station, the album-oriented rock station. Yes. Because they played every kind of music in the world. And it was kind of left up to the jock to pull his own records. Now, everything's consulted, and you're told what your playlists are and everything. But back in those days, the jockeys could pull their own records. And you'd have a guy that would have an airship on it. He'd have a taste for jazz. And he'd kind of lean in that direction. I mean, not go way off the deep end and play 50 cuts in a row. But he would always sequence some in, And then there was a guy, I remember in Denver, one of the guys was a bluegrass enthusiast, and he'd put a little bluegrass in from time to time. And then you'd find somebody else that, they were like a blues enthusiast. And you'd have BB and all these people on. But it was great radio and a lot of music. People got exposed to a lot of music that they had not been familiar with.
That's right.
And it was an exciting time because if you had a good record, you could get it played.
Yeah.
On its own merit. It was not because of some consultant said, I like this, I think it'll test good, and this, that, and the other thing. It was because the program director had a good ear. Yeah. He figured he knew what his people wanted. He didn't care what the people in Savannah, Georgia wanted. What the people in Salem want, that's what we'll play. Yeah. People in Savannah didn't care what the people in Salem wanted. And radio, you could go around the country, and it was such a great thing because if you went to Memphis, you hear that bluesy type stuff in New Orleans. All down that river had a very big influence on. I'm talking to the radio stations, and of course out in Texas they had their influence. But it was not cookie cutter type where you can ride from coast to coast and sound like you're listening to the same radio station. Yeah. And they played a lot of music, and the jocks would pull their own records. They go pull their own albums and play whatever cuts they wanted to. It made for some great stuff.
Yeah. How would you compare that to today? I mean, with the music industry kind of weak.
I don't know how to, because every time I say something like that, somebody thinks I'm saying sour grapes, and I'm not, because I had we had a great time. We had a great run of radio, had a great run of records. We had multi-platinum albums, and we're still out here doing it. 56 years after the fact.
And 21 into the mystery mix keyboards. It's got no meat to it at all. It's like all horn. So we'll either turn the horn down or double check our high pass, make sure that's down to 100.
Yeah, that's where it's at.
Okay, let's turn our horn down a little bit. This mix is super horny. All right, then give us some more gas now.
I ain't scared. Never had one lesson. I'll shoot it to you.
All right, here we go.
If I start trying to listen to a country radio station, and I do try to once in a while, after a while, I sit there and I realize I'm not listening anymore. It's like music. It's part of the background. You know, it is faded into the background because it starts to being modal. It starts to being the same type thing. And then Zach Brown will pop up, or somebody will pop up that's different, and it gets your attention back again, and then it falls back into the sound like the same singer, and I'm not knocking that. That is not. I'm not saying this is to be critical. You asking me how I feel about the music. That's how I feel about the music.
Yeah.
I just can't. I could not pick out one artist from the other most of the time, unless it was by song or something, because the voices sound the same. Everything sounds, and the digital process has gone a long way in kind of promoting that, because we listened one time. I may be getting way too technical, but most people don't know this. We don't realize how much we've lost by losing that old analog technology. When digital machines first came out, Sony, we were doing an album. We were on Epic, and they were putting a machine out, a digital machine. They wanted us to make a record on it, just give us label credit. So they sent the machine down to where we were recording. We had Studer 16 track, and we had their digital. We set it up, we cut tracks, and we patched into both machines. And when we listened to them, we A-B'd them. The ones cut on the analog were a lot warmer, a lot more human sounded than the digital ones were. And we have gone a long way in that direction. It's easier to achieve perfection with digital stuff, but it's not near as human sounding as the old stuff, the old stuff was. And we've lost a lot of that. We all have. I have.
Yeah.
That's
what I was going to ask you, because you have a new album where you do a lot of Dylan covers. And I was going to ask you, how did you record that?
We just went to the studio and cut it like we do everything.
Yeah.
Take the 6 guys in the studio and go cut it. Sit there and bounce ideas off each other. The way we wanted to do that, we wanted to do Dylan stuff.
Yeah.
But we wanted to put our mark on it. We wanted it to be CDB plays Dylan. I didn't want to do Mr. Tambourine Man like Birds. I didn't want to do anything the way Dylan did it. I didn't want to do anything like any covers or anything had ever been done. I wanted to do it totally different. I wanted to do the song, but I wanted to do it different. And that was the criteria for doing it.
Excellent. Well, that's the way covers should be for somebody like you, Charlie. Is you bring your style to it and your emphasis, and so. where do you think America is today when it comes to their veterans?
I remember the day, I'm going to go around my elbow to get my thumb to explain this if you don't, because I have very deep feelings about this.
Yeah.
I remember the day Pearl Harbor was bombed. And I'm from a seaport town down Wilmington, North Carolina. And we had ships that were involved in the war after they came out. They were escorted by destroyers, and they would go all the way across the Atlantic taking war materials to the guys overseas. Right off our coast, they got sunk by German U-boats right off the coast of North Carolina.
Oh, my.
And they said that sometimes it was so close that you could actually see the fires from our beaches. I never did see it, but I've heard people say that. And I learned very early on, we had air raid drills, we had blackouts, we never knew but what they were going to bring the war on shore. We didn't know. Nobody knew, actually. We didn't have the satellite technology and everything for this finding out. It was a pair of binoculars and, hope for the radar would work. And I learned very early on there's two things, and I believe this with all my heart, to protect America then, now, and forever, is the grace of God, the protection of God, and the United States military. That's the only two things that protect this nation. It's not the politicians. It's not the media. It's not anything except those guys and gals that volunteer to put their lives between us and the people that want to hurt us.
Yeah.
And we owe them big time. And I have been a lifelong supporter of the military and will die that way.
Yeah.
As long as I live, I'll be supporting the military.
Yeah.
One of the things that aggravated me about the Vietnam War, the way those guys got treated when he came back, they didn't start that war. They were ordered to go fight it, and they went and fought it. They fought it. They met it on its own rounds. And the thing about it, I found out something. If you weren't there, you don't know. I can't say what people were like in Vietnam. I wasn't there. But there's a whole different thing. We've been to Iraq 3 times. We've been to Afghanistan. We've been, of course, we don't go out on the battlefield, but there's a whole nother thing, about being over there and knowing if you go outside that war, you're going out into danger. Somebody's going to shoot at you or blow up on an IED or something. There's a whole nother thing. There's a whole nother thing about shooting back.
Yeah.
There's a whole nother thing about impulses and stuff. If you hesitate, you could die.
Yeah.
It's the judgment that Marine, that they put that Marine down somebody about making in that room when that guy raised up. He didn't know.
Yeah.
All he'd done, that was his training.
Yeah.
He was in danger. His people were in danger. His guys, his country, his nation was in danger. He had been trained to take care of his people, his nation, and everything. He didn't know if that guy was going to pull a pin on a hand grenade or whatnot, so he shot him.
Yeah.
That's what he was supposed to do. And yet when he gets back here, and all the guys that go out and drink 3 cocktails for lunch and start discussing the military and their, the heavy-duty press guys, and they start talking about this and they start judging that guy. They can't judge that guy.
No way.
I can't judge that guy. You can't. We weren't there. So what I'm saying is it's a totally different thing. The guys that went to Vietnam, there were some atrocious things that happened over there. There were some atrocious things that happened to them. And there's things that happened that I would never defend, and most 99.9% of the Vietnam veterans wouldn't. But everybody in uniform was looked at as by some people in this country were looked at as a villain when they came back. And that is one of the biggest smudges on America's reputation that I can imagine. And I don't ever want to see that happen again. And if there's anything I can do about it, it's not going to. We're going to welcome our veterans back. We're going to see that they get education. We're going to see that they get what they need as best we can. The government's not going to do it. We cannot leave things to our government. The government can't run the post office.
That's right.
If you had a monopoly for 200 years on mail, you were the only guy that carried it up until recently. That was the only one who carried it, and you couldn't make it work. You couldn't make money off of it, and you by law you had no competition.
That's right.
You were the only game in town, and you could not make any money off of it, and you go broke on it.
Yeah.
Is that,
that's
so
right.
what I'm saying is government can't run anything. They can't do it. They do a pretty good job in the military because they got some people there that know what to tell them what to do. But once they get out of the military, look at the big mess at the VA and all. So every American citizen needs to be aware at least of what our veterans are going through.
No, that's great. I can't even imagine the stories that came out of Iraq and stuff. Just can't even imagine any of that going on in my life and being able to come from that back into what we have here in our country. But you're exactly. I support you in your belief there that they're out there protecting us.
Oh yeah,
You know,
that's what they're sent off to do.
Right.
If there's a mistake made, it's made before they go over there.
That's exactly right.
They're there. They've got a job to do. They're doing their job. Don't blame them for doing their job.
Absolutely. That's right.
If you don't want them to do their job, don't send them over there.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they're going to do it.
Well, we've got a lot of crazy things happening in the world these days, but you are still out touring.
Yes, sir.
You're still out doing it and making people happy.
Yeah.
You're a simple man.
Making me happy.
Yeah. Does it really make you happy?
Oh yeah.
I mean, just to be up there
You
playing.
think I'd do it if I didn't?
Well, you know, you just don't know. You know.
I mean, I love what I do. I have never lost my total enthusiasm and love for walking on stage and entertaining people.
Excellent.
I mean, it's a highlight to me. It's like something I've devoted my life to learning how to do.
And you get that energy from the folks. I mean, it just makes you feel
We
good
put
to be
it out,
welcome.
they give it back to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It starts with us.
Yeah.
It has to start with us.
It has to start with you.
You can't expect. I've heard people say, "Well, I ain't getting anything out of the crowd tonight." Well, they get the out of you.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
don't get something out of the crowd, go give them something.
Yeah, that's
You know?
right. Now your bandmates, you were talking about them. You have a lot of great bandmates now, and you've always had great bandmates, but you've always kind of kept the same ones for many years. It's not like you've kind of recycled folks or got new guys all the time. Do you feel like this is kind of a family as far as in traveling?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I was sitting there talking to a couple of your folks, and some of them had said they got basically hired back from from working with you back in the 70s, and others said they that you knew their dad. And
I've got people that have been in this organization that my bass player for 39 years.
39 years. Yeah.
And then it goes down from there down to 3 years.
Yeah.
I got that kid that was back to you right there, my road manager.
Uh-huh.
He was 18 years old when I hired him. It's the only job he's ever had. He came out of high school.
Yeah.
Other than just odds and ends, he just came into this job and started as a roadie.
Yeah.
There's several guys around here that have been here for over 30 years.
Excellent.
And it's great because you really get to know each other. You don't just know somebody, you really know them.
Yeah.
And when I can look at my people, and I can look in my roadie. I can look and do add him a certain way or make a sign or something. And I got signs I make.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just like the stuff you develop.
It's kind of
over
like
the
marriage,
years.
huh?
Well, you develop over the years. It's
Uh-huh.
communicating without having to say anything.
Yeah. Great.
And it's just a wonderful way to live.
Well, we are extremely happy that you're here in Oregon.
Glad to be here.
I'm very happy that you're continuing to tour and get your music out there, because some of the stuff that you've done, warms the soul. It reminds me of things, in my past, but it also reminds me of why, country music is important to all of us, because it really kind of gets down to the root of who we are as Americans, more than any other music, in my opinion. And some of your songs, like Simple Man and that, are really speak to the heart of America. So
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Quite a nice compliment. I appreciate it.
We get to go listen to your music today.
I
so.
hope you will.
Oh yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One of the little green
Playing
plastic
our song. Look at the onions hanging in the back of the car. Is that class or what, man? Like a bunch of onion pickers going around.
We gonna do a show? We gonna take some onions home.
Well, this supposed to be sweet ones. I bought a bag over at a little place across the hotel.
I saw you. The guy told me so. I saw you come back from the coffee shop.
Yeah, I could come back walking through the hotel with a bag of onions. Okay, you got it.
Time to make the donuts.
Verse, chorus, instrumental, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, and tag. Yeah.
Where you gonna put it?
In place of a beat baby.
Okay. All right, I'll see you out there.
Okay, bud.
Thank you. Bless your heart. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a true joy to play for you folks tonight. We love your state. We love coming out here and being with you. You always treat us so nice. We got to get all the way to Minden, Nevada, and do this again tomorrow night. But before we leave, we got one more song we'd like to do for you. Georgia, and he's looking for a soul to steal. He was in a bind because he's way behind. He's willing to make a deal. When he came across this young man, sawing on a fiddle and playing it hot, and the devil jumped up on a hickory stump and said, boy, let me tell you what. Thank you for coming. We love you, Oregon. God bless you. Good night.